So welcome back, everybody. Today we are joined by Heena from Smartnumbers. Welcome, Heena. So why don't you tell us just like a little bit of the story of Smartnumbers and the solution that you guys provide to the market?
Sure. So we are a company that basically helps organizations fight against fraud. So very, very important. We basically help companies and we protect our customers. And this is mainly done through like ensuring that our contact centers are kept safe. But we also, with all the customers that we have a consortium. So they share information with one another, which again is just adding to the impact of trying to protect as many people as we possibly can. That's probably in a nutshell what we do.
Okay, awesome. And so you take care of the HR, right? So why don't you tell us like a little bit of that and what that kind of looks like day to day?
Sure. So I look after the generalist function. So basically everything that you can imagine that sits within HR would fall on my shoulders alongside a team with me as well. And so everything from, your recruitment going through to onboarding, the whole employee experience, and then the whole upskilling, the talent management side of things, the performance side, even looking at organizational design, like how can we structure the business to have an impact, through to the not so nice parts of HR as well, through to things like benefits, compensation, but mainly around how can we add value to the strategic goals of the business. So how do we fall in line? How can we ensure our processes are efficient, quick, scalable, and how can we make sure that we're taking people on that journey? So as the business is evolving, how are we taking our people through that as well?
Okay. So it sounds like you wear about 100 different hats. Would that be about right?
Yes. Yeah. The joy of working for small to medium sized organizations is that you basically have your like a million hats on.
Yeah. Cool. Well, was there some sort of epiphany that led to the creation of Smartnumbers, or like what was the story around the inception of the company?
So I joined the organization 9 years ago. So this is when we were first really looking into fraud and developing a product around that. Before I joined, I'd say that our biggest sort of focus was around protecting all of our calls. So telephony. So ensuring that all of our calls will go from A to B without any interruptions. So, imagine you've got your emergency numbers, coming through our data centers, and we're ensuring that they'll never ever dip. So it's been a bit of a journey with our owner that's kind of gone from, it was all about how can we ensure that we have a very solid connection between calls, to then evolving with different people in the business and different ideas, going through and saying, well, actually, we've got all these calls going on now. Fraud's become a major issue. How can we start protecting our contact centers and our customers, ideally, through ensuring that we can validate if this is a fraudulent call or not?
Okay. And it sounds like a super important solution. So are you guys using AI at all in any of this, or is that
we have
give
like
you a whole bunch of challenges?
host of different teams. So we develop our product in-house. So we have our software engineers, we have a machine learning team as well. And there are different aspects of AI that we're integrating into the product. But I wouldn't sit here and confidently say as the CHRO that I could eloquently tell you what that looks like. But yeah, there's definitely, we've started our journey into it as well, because, there's a lot of aspects around, data protection when it comes to AI and what we can and cannot do. And so that journey's been quite interesting with the compliance team and of figuring out what we can access and what we can't access. And so that's a huge part of it.
Right. Especially with what you guys do, I guess.
Exactly.
For sure. And so, okay, let's bring it back to like more like the things that you do day to day. What do you think have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced over the last 9 years? It's a long time to be at a company.
Yeah. So I'd probably say when I first joined Smartnumbers, the function of HR probably wasn't as taken as seriously as it is today. And so they had consultants supporting them with, I'd probably call it HR admin. And they then decided that they got to a certain number in the business and they really needed someone to come in and make change. And luckily I had the opportunity to come in to really a blank canvas. And I could come in and build everything right from the bottom, which was something that I wanted to take on as the next challenge. But I would say I had freedom to just do whatever I thought I could. And with all my knowledge of working in HR for over 15 years, I'd say the biggest challenge is the change management piece. So when you're coming in and you're trying to have an impact on an organization, there's so many things that you're going to have to do. The structure of the business might need to change. The processes might need to change. People get massively impacted through this. And how do you keep people motivated whilst making all of these changes? And I'd say that was probably my biggest challenge, because I'd probably say nearly every quarter there was something changing. And it was quick, because in my opinion, we need to either figure out if it's going to work or it's not going to work, and we need to fail quickly and learn from that, because I see too many times organizations take ages to make a decision. And because they've not made the decision, they've already had a detrimental impact. You might as well have just tried something, failed, and then kept it moving. So I'd say the change management piece was the biggest thing, because you're dealing with people's emotions, right? And how they feel, or whether, someone's been there for like 25 years and they're like, well, I don't think we should do it that way. And, that kind of like very fixed mentality. So coming in and having that mindset where people can move and not be fixated on something was definitely hard work.
I mean, I can really see that this is something that you're really passionate about and really, really love doing. So what do you think people misunderstand the most about HR?
Oh my God, well, that's a big question. I think people think that we tend to do things in a very cold manner. That, despite the title being human resources, they feel like we're very detached from it because of the legal aspect of what we have to do. There's certain information we can't share. It's not a transparent process. There can be certain things you do where it can be transparent, but a lot of the times, so much of it is confidential. And with that, you don't gain a lot of trust with your employees. And so typically, in a function that's supposed to be all about the people and all about trust and engagement and psychological safety, ends up just having a constant block because of the types of things that HR have to be involved in. And I'd say that that's probably the biggest, the stereotype of HR is that we just do the bad things. And actually, there's so much good that we can add and value we can add to an organization, but people will only ever really see the things that aren't great, but have to be done. I'd probably say that. So not being able to share everything I want to be able to share in a process, and then not really being able to build a high level of trust through that.
Okay. And being in such an important role in the company, what do you think the biggest lesson, I guess, that you've learned over the last 9 years is?
That your leaders are so important. People that are leading teams, or even if you want to say like your board members, your exec team, your, the people that are making the really big decisions, who you have in those positions is so important. And I've seen it work really, really well, and I've seen it go horribly wrong. And actually the impact of even just one leader that's not sort of delivering, or maybe doesn't have the right people skills in managing and taking their team along the journey, can cause such an impact to every other area, doing everything to perform, but just isn't, it's having such a huge impact that none of the other teams can actually go on a journey either. So I'd probably say my biggest learning from that is that you cannot get your leadership recruitment wrong. Like, you got to put a lot of effort into that.
Right. That makes a ton of sense. And okay, so then if you could go back to the beginning of your journey, what do you think are some things that you might do differently now that you have the gift of hindsight, let's call it?
That's a really good question. There's probably quite a lot that I do quite differently. I think I would work on my ability to fully influence key members around me, because I often would be able to sense that something's going to happen and something, or the decision that the company's making is probably not the right path. But my ability to influence the leaders around me is probably something that I would work on even more. So although I may have made my opinions like clear and I'd openly discussed them, the ability to translate that into pivoting our direction and going in another way, like I'd love to be able to have got that skill earlier on in my career.
Okay. And do you feel like this is a skill that you have now and that you're easily able to spot that when it happens now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the skill of my intuition and just with experience, seeing things in front of me, I developed quite early on. But the skill to take your leadership team on a journey with you, I would probably say that was weaker for two reasons, not just because maybe I needed to develop my skills in that area, but HR as a function is not always necessarily taken that seriously at board level. It's not. It's like also there's not many boards that have a HRO on them as well. So a lot of companies are now getting to that place where they're realizing they need that. But I think that HR already has a battle when it enters that level.
Okay. I mean, HR is not something that I understand very well. So this is why I'm asking all these questions.
Sure.
But maybe if we come back to Smart Numbers for a second, because I think what you guys are doing is really cool. Do you have any big initiatives or big plans, priorities for the next 12 months over 2025?
So one of the things that we absolutely want to do is go international. Global's obviously one of our goals as well. And I think going through this process of how do we take what we've built so well here in the UK and move this to certain regions? And how does that impact things like our people, our processes, compliance, everything that we do? Like how do we actually shape that? Do we need people out there, or can we operate it from here? And there's so many questions around what that potentially looks like for us. I think, maybe entering different markets as well. So currently, within the banking industry, we're doing particularly well. What about the insurance sector, the travel sector, the retail sector? Like, how can we translate into those environments and do more research in there as well? And I think from a company perspective, how can we be efficient and impactful, but lean? So, how are we looking at how we're creating these roles and functions within the company that are able to actually deliver? Because the biggest thing, the journey that I think we're currently going through is like, what impact does each role make, and where do they feed into this whole customer journey? Like, with layering in our product in there, where do you fit in as an individual, and how are you making an impact to the organization and the end person being the customer? And that's, if anyone, I'm sure lots of people have attempted doing it, but it's a really difficult task to try and make that as effective as possible.
I can imagine, yeah. I mean, maybe even one of the most difficult tasks for sure. So how are Smart Numbers going about acquiring some of these clients? So you mentioned that banking, you've done really well. Traditionally, banking is quite a difficult market to penetrate. I might be wrong, but like, how are you guys managing to get in front of decision makers at these companies?
I think the biggest thing is we're helping people, we're helping like contact centers identify some of their biggest issues, right? Take the banking sector. The amount of fraud that happens within these environments it's wild, and how much money that these banks are losing. So I think for us, it's about how can we actually put the problem in front of you, because we have a solution, but how can we make you realize through the data that this is how much money you are losing as an organization, and actually Smart Numbers can come in and really support you through this process. But, at the end of the day, the customer is the one that also gets hugely impacted by this. And how can we help you improve that whole customer journey that you have with your clients? And how can Smart Numbers help improve that? So there's so many benefits from it. And I think for us, it's one of those things as well, is once you nail it with one particular bank, it's a roll-on effect with others, and, the referral type of vibe. But, when I talk about us having the consortium with all these banks sharing information with one another, we're, massively increasing our chances of catching somebody through the process. And so that's quite exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like you mentioned, there's this massive problem and you have the solution. It's really just about educating them and taking them across that awareness bridge and making them understand. And I found the best way to do that is with education-based marketing. It seems to work really well in an industry where it takes a lot of education to understand the solution that's deeply needed. But the problem is often, sometimes people don't even understand that the problem exists. Sometimes it's very apparent, but you hit the nail on the head with that one, I think. Cool. So Heena, I have a bit of a strange question. It's always a favorite of mine to ask because the answers I get are always interesting. So let's say that you had a magic wand that you could wave over a big problem right now, either within the industry or the business. Like, let's leave world peace for Mr. Beast, and he'll do that. And you could wave this magic wand and you could solve that problem like that. What would that big problem be?
I'm going to make it specific to my role. But the ability to be able to find talented individuals is a huge problem. There are so many candidates out there right now, and actually being able to pinpoint and be targeted to those really talented candidates, I think is a real challenge. Through recruitment processes, I mean, God, you can ask as many questions as you want and you can be put through so many tests and stuff, but finding that real rare talent or someone who's going to be able to come in and probably be worth 3 or 4 people, that's a real issue at the moment, especially where there's so many candidates available at the moment as well. So even if you try and do your own recruitment yourself when you're posting things via LinkedIn, the amount of applications that are coming through are incredible. Okay, you can apply AI into it and you can start getting the system to start screening them. But I mean, I think it's a bit soulless, and I still need to probably improve my relationship with AI. But yeah, I would probably say that, because that's, for me, talented employees, your people, can make such a huge impact. And if I can't find those people, that's a problem. So yeah.
I think finding these A players is the bane of everyone's existence growing any business, right? Because if you could just duplicate yourself 20 times, it would be super easy. But unfortunately not the case. Well, look, Heena, I really appreciate the time today. If people want to connect with you or they want to check out Smart Numbers, like, where can they go and how can they connect with you?
LinkedIn's probably the best way to get updates on Smart Numbers and also connect directly with myself as well.
Perfect. I'll make sure to leave the link in the description. But I really appreciate the time and the insights. I really learned some things about HR. It's not something that I have a ton of knowledge on. So I really appreciate that, Heena.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys very much for watching. We will see you in the next podcast.